My hat! Alright, so here I'm going to begin with censored and blinky. Now I do have a lot of notes toward the end of the video once I have the data table. But here I'm going to run the vehicle, and I decided to run the same setup as the previous video just to compare it, but I wanted a base run. So here I'm running the vehicle. I'm actually getting out of the way for cars at this point, but I'm going to be running the vehicle just to show, just to get that baseline, and then do the comparison with the other modes, going sensorless, etc. But here we go. So the very first run, this is blinky censored, and it's alright. It's a 345. Consistently I can usually run a 330 during midday, but it's actually dark. The camera is actually doing a very good job of making it seem it's light, a lot lighter than it is. So now I'm going sensorless. I just took the sensor out, and I want you to notice how it cogs. So if you've ever wondered the difference between sensor mode and sensorless, sensorless really cogs in the beginning. Watch. Versus censored is a lot smoother. It's much smoother to start. Now top speed, once you're going high speed, sensorless is best. So if you have an ESC like an RX-8, that's a great choice. It runs dual mode. It'll do low speeds censored, and then high speeds it'll go sensorless. So this run is a 360. So that is my blinky sensorless run. So now I'm going to go ahead and run the vehicle. So this time I decided to put to run it a second time just to compare. And like I said, it's actually a lot darker temperature. It's quite cold, and well, not really. It's not really that cold. It's, oh, that's a good question. It was probably about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees Celsius, roughly somewhere around there, which is colder than I usually run it. And I have it geared and set up to where I just pull and not think about it, but because it's a lot cooler than how I usually run it, I have to think about it. You do need more than one pack in order to do all of the runs successfully, so that is something that I do not show here, but I am running 6600 2S milliamp hour batteries, same type for all of these. But here's the run. Now this is the one I'm actually going to give you the time for, and yes, I hit the only marker that is on the road. But here we go. This is a 363 right in here. Now here it looks a lot darker, but all of these were done within the same hour. And there goes the car. It's still sensorless. The difference is now there's boost. There's 62 degrees of boost. So now I am at 109. 47 from the end bell, and this is the number, so 366. Again, the difference is in the weather, really. They are practically the same. So running blinky sensorless and running sensorless boost, pretty much the same. But I am going to switch it up and connect the sensor and do another run to compare it. And to be honest, it's going to be a pleasant surprise. So for those of you that are focusing on drag cars, not touring cars, I still do not recommend you go over 60 degrees, and I'll explain it later with the data table. But for those of you interested in drag cars and running timing, there's actually a very nice surprise. So here I connect the sensor wire, and then after that I do the runs. Now keep in mind, yes, this isn't fully scientific because the tires were not all the same temperature the entire time. Asphalt is not the same temperature, but it's close enough. And there is the run. And you can actually hear, in person, you can hear the motor whine, and that was a 321. So yes, it was faster with a lot more timing, but there are some changes that I made, and those are important. That I'm going to explain with the data. I'm just going to use the data table really so I can keep talking. But there are some very important changes in the setup compared to the first one. Before I go into those changes, there's three particular individuals I would like to think. One of them is Dirty 263. The other one, Giomali Silly or Sille, Blind J. Thank you all very much. And the reason why is in your post you started asking questions, and there's things that I never thought about, like why would I go over 100 degrees of timing? And the reason why is in a touring car, and this is important, so if you're watching this for touring cars, in a touring car, you're running for 5 minutes. You're not running for 3 seconds. So that's a big difference. The higher up you go in timing, you're going to notice an exponential increase in amperage, which means that, one, your battery pack isn't going to last that long. Just the charge isn't going to last that long. And if you're training it that fast, its life is probably not going to last that long either. But you're running for 5 minutes. So that's something to keep in mind. Keep in mind that if you could run at 100, 110 degrees, the motor from start to finish, that's probably the way a lot of motors would come out of the box. But do go to that very first video that just talks about the basics of timing, how it works, and why you really don't want to exceed 60 degrees. But if you've already watched it, I'm just going to summarize it. Once you go beyond 60 degrees, part of the rotor wants to sort of go back in reverse. So you have part of it going forward. It's still going forward overall because a phase is 120, right? So you're still within the forward phase, but then remember there's so you have one pole facing one direction, you have a pole the other. So these poles are getting attracted, but you're dividing, if you divide it in 2 or 4, but let's focus in 2. So that'd be 50-50, so 360 degrees divided by 2, right? That's 180, but a phase is 120. So you have that 60 degree difference. So that's something to keep in mind. But yes, part of the magnets in the rotor is still going forward, which is why you can get away with it based on this test. Now, if it weren't for those 3 individuals that I mentioned, I wouldn't have gone through this rabbit hole. So one of the things that these individuals made me think about is, one, well, let's try it out just for kicks in a drag car. Again, I don't recommend going over 60 in a touring car, which is why I did the first 2 videos. Actually, it's just a coincidence that I was doing a drag car, that I was using my drag car. It was just easier. Plus that drag car, that's generally stock. So the ESC is generally blinky. So you would never go over 60 degrees anyway. But anyway, that aside. So going back to what I was mentioning, I was just using the car to test it, and on the first test, which I guess would be video number 2, one of the things that happened is I added turbo and I added boost. This time I did not add turbo, and the reason why is I thought for the test, turbo kicks in right away as soon as it's full throttle. Well, let's get rid of turbo. So I decided to just do, instead of 40 boost, 20 turbo, just do 62 boost, no turbo. The other thing too is, based on the recommendations of those 3 individuals, was not to start off boost at such low RPM, 6,000 RPM. And that got me thinking, and I thought, that makes sense. And the reason why is, at low RPM, the motor's not spinning fast enough to just continue to the next phase and move on. So there's still too much time between the phases. So if I wait until the RPMs are higher, right, the revolutions per minute, the motor's going to have a lot more, not inertia, help me out, momentum. There we go. Momentum going forward, or spinning, whatever direction it's spinning. So it'll be able to get away, because at that point it's spinning so fast, it's probably not going to care. And that's actually what I found out. So that was pretty cool. So I like it when people make me think. And here is the data for the runs, but the one I'm going to focus on first is this one. So this is the first run. This is the Blinky run. And yes, I said I can usually consistently get 330. So if you think of that 330, that's still going to be important. But here we have the numbers. So notice the speed compared to this one. This is the one with 109 boost. The time, faster, right? 321. So we're going to compare to that 330. This is still faster. In the past warmer weather, I have gotten under 330. So keep that in mind. So the difference could be in the weather. But again, right now I was sort of desperate because we keep getting rained in. So I just had to go out and do it regardless of what time of day or what the weather was like. That's the reason why. Maybe in warmer weather I might try it again. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. But if we look at the speed, there's a big difference. Anyway, but there shouldn't be that much difference, to be honest, in the beginning, because they're, well, I guess 20,000 RPMs is actually pretty soon. It's actually pretty early, so if we go into the videos. So that could be why. But if we go to 1 second, because 1 second is reliable, so 1, 2, and if there's a 3, because the GPS actually gets GPS coordinates every second, that's how it works, and then everything in between it just calculates based on just force, based on a sensor that it has on board. But we have here 38, so 142 at 38, 1 at 3150. And if we go to 2, we notice we have 57. Now there's no acceleration here, right? But here's 57, but we're between 0.32 and 0.21. Here, notice there's more acceleration and we're at 64. And the reason why is this one is running out of kV, so it's running out of RPM. This one is not, and the reason why is because of the higher timing. But because the boost came in later, 20,000 RPMs, the motor was spinning so much faster at that point that it didn't care. So this time it did not limp like it did before. So those are some of the things to keep in mind. And I guess the most important thing is if you're going to do something, try to do it right. Anyway, that aside. So based on this, I am not saying based on these findings that running over 60 degrees is best for everything forever and ever. Not at all, not even close. Again, if you're running a touring car, you're running for 5 minutes, not 3 seconds. But what I am saying is, yes, you can get away with more timing, even over 100, as I did, degrees. But you have to time when your timing kicks in, and that is very important. So something, for those of you looking into touring cars, just hold your horses, relax, keep doing what you're doing, especially if you're doing a stock class. It's Blinky. You can't add boost anyway, unless you're running mod, but that's a different story. Then you can mess around with boost and timing. But you would only use it for short bursts. So don't get too excited and try to run a 5-minute race. So how would you do this, for example, say in a short course or even a touring car? Let's just say you're using mod. Well, you plan for the straight. So what I mean by that is try to figure out what speed your motor is running. And by what speed your motor is running, I'm talking about RPM in the infield. And then once you know that, the straight, you're going to max out your speed so it doesn't matter. So you can set up boost expecting, you know, this like crazy boost over 100 once you are at an RPM that you would be in the straightaway. So that's how you can use that. And then turbo, you can use it because on the straightaway, chances are you're going to be hitting full throttle. Versus in the infield, you're probably not. Then again, it's going to depend on the track. If you have a slow track, medium track, or a fast track, something to keep in mind as well. Now, drag car, if you're running anything that isn't stock, then knock yourself out. But one of the things that I am strongly going to recommend is you consider an ESC such as a Tiken RX8 or a Macklin that has the drag software, so either one of those with drag software or something similar, so that you can set delays in the timing. that's the reason why. So based on this, you really want to set those delays. And as of this video, I believe those ESCs have 5 settings. I could be wrong. Maybe they're up to 7 now. I don't remember. I do have an RX-8, but I don't use it in a drag car anymore because it's in my Fortec because it's awesome. Anyway, that aside, so moving on. So these are some of the things to keep in mind. So just to sum it up, when it comes to all of these other modes that I showed you, yeah, the differences in the weather, they don't really care. So sensored versus sensorless with boost. So sensorless with boost and then no boost. It doesn't really care because the sensor is not really helping you. Over here, these are full sensored. It's going to make a difference. Now, once again, the nice thing about ESCs such as the Tiken is they're dual mode, so they'll start off sensored and then they'll go sensorless at high RPM. So something else to keep in mind, boost, if you do exceed 60 degrees of timing, make sure that it's at a higher RPM or else it's going to go limp. So everything from the previous videos still hold. This is just additional information that thanks to those 3 individuals, I went down the rabbit hole and figured out, which was actually kind of nice. So I am very, very thankful and glad that those comments were posted. So this being said, I hope this information is useful and informative, or at least entertaining. Please subscribe if you have not, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you so much for watching.
Oh, my hair! My car! My rod!